I'll have a beer. Roaming. Let's see if that worked, mate. Maybe we'll be back.
We shall be back.
Let's have a look if we're on YouTube now. Yes, we are live, mate, I think. Hello. Hello, Yelena. Can you hear us? If you can, please write in the chat. I've basically unplugged my Ethernet.
Yeah, it looks like we're live.
Yeah, I've just unplugged my Ethernet, and we're now trying on the Wi-Fi. So hopefully we are now live. If Hello, Combe. We are live. I think the problem was, Roberto, my Ethernet for some reason does not like me streaming, but the Wi-Fi does. Okay. Hello, welcome to FPL Have a Beer. I'll start again. Please like to get the video out to the masses if you're watching live, and please subscribe. It would mean the world to me to get this channel up to 500 subscribers by the end of the month. So if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. So while this channel is mostly known for the Meet the Managers video, I'm planning to do a kind of structured, proper live stream next season. But as above, Adam of Above Average FPL said to me in the interview that came out this week, the only way to practice live streaming is to live stream, especially in terms of these sort of technical hiccups. So that's what I'm doing today, and probably will do a few more times between now and the end of the season. I think Yelena may be joining me if she can get her computer fixed at some point between now and the end of the season. So I'm honoured to be joined by a good friend of the channel who is coming on for a second time himself, FPL Yellow Army, aka Roberto, who's been off flaunting himself on the BBC this week. We'll talk about that later, Roberto, but how are you, mate?
Oh, it's a pleasure to have me. It's a pleasure to be on, I should say.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's a pleasure to have you.
That sounds wrong. It came out wrong. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So thank you, Gary. I really enjoy your kind of different videos. I know that your speciality, so to speak, is those interviews, and I love that style. Honestly, they're the sort of videos that I could watch at 2 o'clock in the morning on the toilet, or at half one at lunch. Like they're so watchable. But I also love that you're branching out now and trying to do some other stuff, and it's really good to see. And yeah, these sort of pre-deadline chats are really interesting because I think it shows a different side to you, to be honest, because we see your sort of interviewer style.
This is the panicked me.
Yeah, the panic. Yeah, we don't see the sort of literal what do you think about transfers pre-deadline sort of Gary. So it's good to see. Looking forward to talking through the blank game week 29.
Yeah, and unfortunately we're going live at the same time as FPL Black Box. Obviously here is the place to be.
Exactly.
This was literally the only time we could schedule it, but please, I'm hoping maybe some people watch afterwards. Okay, so in this one, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at our teams and how we both got on last week. We're going to have a look at our teams for the upcoming game week. Then I have done a draft free hit. Roberto has done a draft wildcard, although if anyone was on the FF Scouts, what do you call it? Stream with Sam.
Q&A.
Yeah. Everyone was saying, don't wildcard. I'm not actually planning to wildcard. But then Andy, Let's Talk FPL, dropped in and said he's doing it. And I think he probably is, because I watched his team selection earlier on today and it sounds like it is. But anyway, if he is, Roberto's got a wildcard for him.
I hopefully can influence the man himself.
Yeah, and then we'll have a bit of a look at the assistant manager table you lovingly created, Roberto, towards the end, and I might question you a bit about the BBC. Okay, so what am I doing now? Let's have a look at our teams, which is this tab here, I believe. Okay, so this is my team. So all of last game week really came down to Salah versus Palmer, didn't it? Whether or not you captained him or not. I was in the lucky position that I did captain him, which was good fun over the weekend when I was on Elite FPL and then went out with Steve over the following day as he captained Palmer. Not so good for him.
No.
But to be honest, despite that, and I had Jimenez as well, Raul Jimenez. I'll read out my team. That's what we're supposed to do on this, isn't it? Pickford with 2 points, Gabriel with 2 points, Anderson with 0, Trent, who is now injured, with 2, Odegaard with 3, lovely Salah with 30, Palmer with just the 1, Trossard with 1, and Burmo with 2, Raul Jimenez with 8, which was nice, and Vissa. But I still got Red Arrow, so
yeah.
I'm not sure who else really banged last week that would have done that.
Well, Palace defense was probably the killer for you, I would imagine. Having no Palace defense, because we'll get to it when we talk about my team, but I was saved by Palace defense, to be honest.
Do you think that many people have Palace defense then?
I think most teams have at least one of Munoz or potentially Henderson.
Okay.
So if you didn't have any Palace, also I think the sort of midfielders, a lot of them blanks, and a lot of the popular midfielders blanked as well. So if you had like someone like even a Clivert, right? I know that he only got 5 points in the end, but those sort of small returns actually were kind of quite big in a week like this. So
yeah, I did have my Jimenez 8 low.
Yeah,
so I was hoping that. So I'm on about bloody hell, 500,000 now. So it's 400,000 last time I looked. So as with a lot of content creators, I am meandering around this sort of mark. I think Az and Yelena are around there as well. Yelena can tell me if I'm wrong. So let's move on and have a look at your team, Roberto.
Yeah.
Oh, 62 points.
Yeah, very nice week for me. But kind of down to small margins, really, because going into the last game of the game week at West Ham Newcastle, I was on a red arrow. I think I was about sort of 1 or 2 points away from a green. So kind of small margins. But I thought to myself, oh, well, to get that green, I'll need a Bowen return, because Bowen was kind of quite lowly owned and everyone had Isak. But luckily,
do you want to read out? Sorry, mate. Do you want to read out your team just in case anyone?
Yeah. I'll go for it. So thank you, Yelena. I appreciate it in the comments. So I had Henderson, which was really, really lovely when he got that 10-pointer. Originally, he got an 11-pointer, but unfortunately, with the way that official FPL's, tinkering with the bonus points this system and, changing it up until the last hour of the last game of the game week, they gave it to all 3 bonus to Ismail Assar, which, to be fair, as someone who loves him, if it had to be anyone that got that 3rd bonus.
Oh yeah, and Alex Follow captained him as well, didn't he? So we were pleased on the stream, on the Elite FPL stream, when he scored that one for Alex.
But no, honestly, I love Henderson to death at this point. Like, he's just, I had Flecken previously, and he has just been so much better since I bought him. So yeah, really love him. The Arsenal defense was a bit frustrating, double Arsenal defense when Gabriel and Timber's clean sheet wipeout came in, especially the manner of the goal from Arsenal to concede. I mean, what Raya was doing, I don't quite know. But it was nice in the end, actually, that game, because Timber picked up an assist for the Rice goal, which kind of quite nice. He's quite lowly owned, Timber, so I've kept him all this time, Gary.
Yeah, sort of justifies it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, all that time since that Elite FPL watch along we did back in
November,
December. Yeah,
you've had him since then. Bloody hell.
Yeah, he's been staying in my team, and the double defense has been kind of quite lowly owned, to be honest. Most people have only got 1, but in the weeks where they do concede, an attack and return is lovely. Trent, very frustrating. The way that Southampton can score in that first half, you just think it's never going to happen. But unfortunately, Liverpool haven't been the most watertight recently. And as you said, Trent, with the injury he picks up in the Champions League, and he was already blanking this week. So he's going to probably be a sell for me now. But I mean, he's done okay. He's got a few hauls this season. Midfield wise, so 30 from Salah. It was never in my mind. I know a few people thought about Palmer cap, but it was never in my mind of not captaining the best player in the game of all time.
Were you relieved to see? I just seen Yelena saying, I can see where Roberto was on Fantasy 606. He's brilliant, and I just want to make one other point as well. Colm, you may notice I've actually tried. I mean, you can see the little bit of green behind my head, but I have actually got a background there, so you can't just see the green screen. I did that especially for you, Colm. Did you have any doubts about whether he'd start? I did.
I didn't.
Did you
genuinely? Salah is just a minutes monster. Like, in the games where we think, oh, surely there'll be some rotation, he just starts every game. And I thought to myself, even if he does come off early, which I didn't think was likely. I thought he'd get I think before the deadline, I was thinking to myself, he'll probably get like 75 or less, or potentially, but I thought around 70, 75, that would be enough anyway against that Southampton defence. But in the end, he got 90 because of the fact that, Liverpool conceded. It kind of helped Salah having to stay on. So, yeah, it was no doubt in my mind. After Palmer had somehow dodged the points against Southampton, I thought to myself, could Palmer do the same against Leicester? Yeah. Probably, the way he's kind of been playing recently. And look, I get, for those that, have been struggling this season with their rank and they needed to chase, that should have been a game that Palmer scored, and the fact he's missed his first ever penalty is terrible. But Salah is just not worth going against, and the only week we can seem to do that is when there's a double game week opportunity, or like this week coming up where there's a blank. So love him. And Kluivert should have had more, to be honest, against Tottenham. I mean, he had a goal disallowed thanks to an offside from Semenyo, and it looked so dangerous. I'm happy I went for him a few weeks back, because I think a lot of people have got Semenyo, and I'd be frustrated right now if I was a Semenyo owner. So, yeah, really love him. Bowen blank, 2 points. That was really frustrating, because I was hoping that in that game against Newcastle, he'd deliver. And the last couple of weeks, he's been a bit underwhelming, but I'm still happy to have him for long term, because the fixtures are pretty good. And there's a good chance that he'll potentially double in 33 as well. So, yeah, happy to hold him. Dango's the most frustrating one, because I kept Gakpo this week, Gary. We kept all the faith.
Hi, Joseph, by the way. A lot of, I remember when we and Steve were out on our walk, and he was very, very frustrated when he saw the team sheet and that he was benched.
Oh, so frustrating, because they
were saying it was going to take longer for, what's his name? How do you say his name? The striker.
Evan Nilsson.
They were saying it was going to take him longer to come back, weren't they?
Oh, it's so frustrating, because, when I brought in Dango, it was probably around sort of 25, 26 that I brought Dango in. At that time, it looks a great buy, because we were getting reports that Evan Nilsson wouldn't be back until, funnily enough, this game week, game week 29. He kind of came in way ahead of schedule. I think he was on the bench for around 26, 27. And we were like, okay, right, that's a problem for Dango straight away. But it wasn't a transfer, was worth doing at the same time. And I'd originally started Gakpo thinking, surely, because I had kept Gakpo in the weeks that a lot of people moved him to Cunha or Watkins. And to be fair, Watkins has done well in that time.
Is he on your bench? Is he on your...
Yeah, so I started Gakpo. You
love him.
I do. I kept the faith, because I just thought this could be the week where he goes off against Southampton. But it was so frustrating, because we didn't get much clarity from Slot pre-deadline. And obviously he missed the PSG game because he picked up a new injury in the midweek before that Southampton game. Because it looked like he was going to be, back kind of fitness-wise, because he'd come off the bench against City and Newcastle. So, yeah, really frustrating. And then to kind of get Dango off the bench, because I thought there was a good chance Dango would be benched as well. But at least, I didn't get punished by that decision, because I was thinking about potentially doing Gakpo to Marmoush, and I ended up choosing not to. And it was the same result anyway, 1 point. And Castagna, who would have come on if Dango hadn't have been subbed on, also got one. So it was fine in the end. But
yeah, pretty much nothing over nothing.
Yeah, and it just meant I wanted to keep Gakpo if he'd played, and I also wanted to roll in 28. So it means now I've got 2 frees for 29, which is quite nice. But Isak with 2, again, frustrating, because I think a lot of people sold. I was confused by that, because West Ham was a great fixture, and I'm going to want Isak.
I was surprised they risked him with... I mean, we've got the Carling Cup final, as a Newcastle fan coming up. I didn't want him to start because I haven't got him in my FPL team, but more than that, I didn't want him to start because of the Carling Cup. It seemed an unnecessary risk to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more a thing of that Newcastle have dropped off recently, and so they needed a bit of momentum going into the Liverpool game. So they probably thought, let's try and win this, and then kind of get him subbed off with about 10, 15 minutes to go. And in the end, that's what happened. Wilson came on the last sort of 10 minutes. So, yeah, I'm happy that Isak played, because it shows how important he is, regardless of them having that Liverpool game on the horizon. But after the Cup game, I think Isak, I've seen people selling him this week in 29. I just think you're going to want him for game week 30.
Yeah.
You're going to want him. I can understand it because you're trying to get to Haaland, but for me, you're going to want him 30 against that Brentford defence. And then obviously he's going to be huge for 32 with the double. So, yeah, I think it's worth keeping the faith. And then Chris Wood has been so good all season. I can't complain. It is back-to-back doubles. Back-to-back blanks for him the last couple of weeks. But you know what? He's been up against City, and
it's because Az brought him in, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, Az broke him this week. He said it on his stream with his vlog with Yelena. So yeah. But that was fine because Wood is just honestly he's carried my season, so I'll forgive him, and I'm happy to potentially captain him in 29. We'll have to see.
So I think just Colm saying here, I saw that Dango took himself out of the team as well, Joe. Talking of Castagna, Kenny Tete was seen on the grass today. To be fair, he could still be weeks away. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so interesting that, but I do think it's fine for 29. I think Castagna will start because the thing about Castagna is he's just been someone who I've had just as a bench option and rotate in when he's got good fixtures. And the fact he's got a fixture in 29 means I'll start him against Tottenham, which, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Fulham won that 1-0, the way Tottenham are going this season. So hopefully something there for a clean sheet or an attacking return. And then by sort of 30, I'll probably be benching him anyway, and then I'll be wildcarding 31. So Castagna being sort of not a long-term option necessarily is not a problem for me, I think.
Do you remember, I have a stupid memory for things like this, but do you remember this blank game week last season was when the free hit nightmare happened, but the specific thing I remember is everyone got loads of Tottenham players in thinking they'd thrash Fulham and they lost 3-0, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. And you know what's funniest about that? The funniest thing about that is I free hitted as well. That week I scored 20 points on my free hit, and that was enough for a green. It was a green arrow.
Yeah, I had something similar.
It was incredible. But I scored 20 points throughout my whole 11. My bench, I think, scored 25.
Right.
Just on my bench. So I scored more in my actual bench than my team. And a part of that bench pain was I had first on bench Muniz. And that was the week he went off with, I think, got like 13 pointers. So, yeah, that was a painful one. But hopefully this week will be better.
Okay, right. So we are going to have a look. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about, firstly, free hitting and secondly, wildcarding. So I think we'll have a look at our drafts before we go back and look at our own teams, Roberto. So first of all, I charged Roberto with putting together a wildcard because that was a much more difficult thing to do, and Roberto is so talented. And I put together a free hit draft, which is this one, and I'm so lazy, Roberto, I didn't even do this myself. I just took the recommended free hit draft off FPL Review, but I think it gives us a good, to be honest, I don't really, well, it's okay, but I certainly think there are some issues with this. So
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, so I'll read it out with anyone listening. Pickford and Ray are the two goalkeepers. Obviously, remembering this is a free hit. When I did this, I still had quite a bit of money left in the bank, which I guess is why there's a 5 million reserve goalkeeper. Well, would he be reserved? Well, we can talk about that in a minute. Gabriel, Dallo, Missouri, Aiton Nuri, and Mekalenko, is that how you say his name? In defence.
Yep.
Odegaard, Bruno Fernandes, Mbuemo, Semedo, and Cliver in midfield. And then, say his name for me, I hate trying to say this name.
Evan Ilson.
Evan Ilson. Whenever I say it, I want to say Evan. I mean, it's Evan. Evan Nilsson.
Yeah, Evan Ilson.
Okay. Wood and Haaland up front. So, I'm assuming in this you'd bench... Who would they be benching here?
So the logical play, I think, this is the problem about a free hit when you go all out, because you could have caused yourself benching problems. Because I would never bench Gabriel, ever. No. He's got too much goal threat. I'd probably bench Mikalenko and probably one of the United defenders as well, because I don't think double up. Yeah, maybe Mazraoui would be on the bench. Play Dallo. And then
Evan.
Yeah, probably Evan Ilson. Yeah. So then you'd probably be looking at probably a 3-5-2. Although, yeah, it's probably. But...
I mean, one of the reasons people who watch my content regularly will know that I am a big fan of review, and it's messed me up. I mean, one of the reasons that I have Odegaard is when Saka got injured, it was like that's what it recommended, and he's been terrible. He's got 2 goals and 2 or 3 assists all season. But it's still sticking with him.
No, I just.
It's crazy.
Let me put my cards on the table here, Gary. I
Yeah,
honestly don't. I've never looked at one of these like FPL analytical sites
right.
once in my life. So this is just my opinion, of course. But something like FPL Review or FPL Fantasy Football Fix or whatever. If I'm looking at that and in particular for a chip like a free hit,
Yeah.
for me, free hit is all about what manager style you are. So there'll be some managers that will change their entire team on a free hit and go for like basically 11 players under 10%. And there'll be other managers that will go probably 8 or 9 template picks and then 2 or 3 differentials.
Do you think this would be template? I mean, I've watched a few free hit videos from the big content creators this week, but I've not paid that much attention because I'm not free hitting.
Yeah, I mean the players on this that I think are template potentially for a free hit would be Haaland, Wood, Evan Nilsson, Fernandez, and Mbeumo and Kluivert.
Okay.
But outside of that, I don't think a lot of these will be picked. I mean, I see a lot of people hyping up Ait Nouri, for instance. I don't rate that pick at all. I think Wolves will I can conceivably see them concede that game because Wolves have to look at it as a game that, on paper they should win. But Southampton equally will look at it without Cunha and see it may be a game they could win. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
I've seen a lot of the content creators talking about Garvadio. I'm not a big fan of him for this week.
No, I've had a bit of conflicted sort of views on Gvardiol. So earlier on in the week, I was really hot on him because I thought, yeah, because I'll probably not be able to get to Haaland this week. He's sort of, inverted commas, my City cover. At least I got some sort of City action in that Brighton game. But the more I've thought about it, I've had a few good discussions online about Gvardiol.
I think Brighton will score.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He is 5.9, and I've looked into it. I thought about it, and I'm right. Like, the only reason we're considering City players this week are because of Leicester in 30.
Yeah.
I think if the Leicester game wasn't there, we wouldn't be getting them this week. So I think a Forest defender, no Forest defender in this draft, I think is probably a mistake. I would definitely have one. If it's Sells or maybe a Milenkovic or something. I just think there's a good chance Brighton score, because I feel like a lot of people are kind of playing down how well Brighton are doing right now. Like they've won 6 in a row. They beat City in the reverse game. City are really struggling at the moment. And there could be goals for City, but I also think there could be goals for Brighton. So I think Gvardiol might not be worth it now.
Yeah, I agree. I suppose we're not too template in the defence here. I mean, I read last week on Fantasy Football Scout that, they did one of those polls that about 10% of people are going to be playing their free hit. So I guess 10% of engaged players. Do you think, I'm assuming you're not free hitting, Roberto, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Do you think we have much to fear of those free hitters? I mean, the fact there's only 10% would suggest no to begin with, but even for those who do you think we've got much to fear?
No, I don't think we do, to be honest, because I think even if it's a good week for the free hitters, I think that gap will be made up in 33 or 34.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the teams we're seeing on free hit have players like Haaland, which, some people are ripping up their teams to get, which I don't agree with either, to be honest. But a lot of the kind of picks people will go for are your likes of Kluivert, which a lot of people have got, your Chris Woods, potentially your Forest defenders, which people will, probably quite easily get to this week with, how cheap they are. So I think it's just, we have to think about the potential upside later. And I remember this last season, a lot of people were like, free hit in 29 because there's so few games. And so everyone's teams are going to be in the mud. This season's very different, where this is going to be the smallest blank of the season. And the biggest blank is actually going to be in game week 34. Yeah. And that could be sort of 6 to 8 teams blanking, right? We don't know exactly who will blank. But the point being is it's going to be more than the 4 teams blanking this week, right? So you could play it 2 ways. You could play aggressive and double it, in the free hit and the double in 33, which I'm looking at doing, because I think the kind of potential of the free hit usually is to play defensive when there's a big blank. But because a lot of the FA Cup results have turned out where fixtures are falling now into 34 is, I think, looking a lot more manageable than it was a few weeks ago. So because of that, maybe free hit can be used sort of in 33.
So if someone is thinking about playing free hit, I mean, how bad do you think it needs to be in terms of how many?
That's a good question. I mean, I've seen a lot of people say about like numbers. I think numbers is irrelevant this game week, honestly. I think it's quality over quantity. So when it comes to if you had, say, 9 players playing, obviously that wouldn't be a free hit. But if you also equally had sort of only 7 players, then I would say if you then make a couple transfers, you take a hit, that's 9. If you didn't think that was good enough and you wanted to have 11, if of those 9 players, you've got the main threat. So you've got players like Fernandez, players like Haaland potentially, if you really want him, Chris Wood, Kluivert, maybe an Arsenal defender, potentially a Forest defender, and potentially like a Sells or something in goal, then that's fine. Like it's about the sort of players you're covering rather than the numbers. So like, for instance, my team, I've seen a lot of people say, oh, you know, you need to make sure you take as many hits just to get 11 out. I think that's a bad take because
I agree.
I've seen a lot of good teams that have got 9 or 10 players that are looking good on paper. Or for instance, like me, I won't have a goalkeeper because Henderson's not going to play and I've got a no backup goalkeeper. So but having 10 players
you're not going to
is fine.
You're not going to take a hit then for that?
No.
Okay.
Definitely not, because especially when it comes to goalkeepers, there's no goalkeeper in the game that's worth a -4 in my opinion. So I think it's worth just, if you've got 10 players or 11 players, yeah, definitely don't use a free hit and save it for later.
Okay, so we'll move on to have a look at your wildcard draft. But before that, let's have a discussion about whether this week is a good week to wildcard. Ben Crellin's wonderful Ben Crellin, who I did invite last week on for an interview, so he hasn't replied yet. Maybe you'd get him on there at some point.
He's in high demand.
Yeah, he is. I mean, I would have said, I mean, I put a lot of credence in what Let's Talk FPL Andy says, rightly or wrongly. I would have said there would be no way on earth people should wildcard this week. Because we don't know the results of the doubles. We don't know the completely how the doubles are going to turn out yet. And also, you're going to have to make compromises because of the blank game week. For example, you're not going to be able to, well, we'll look at your team, your wildcard draft in a minute. You're not going to be able to get loads of Crystal Palace players in. Well, and Newcastle players, you can only bench 4 of them, can't you?
Exactly.
So, would you? I mean, I know Let's Talk FPL, and he does have a lot of like injuries and stuff in his team this week.
Yeah, but I think it's very team dependent. I think that's the point, isn't it? Because to be fair, like we've been bantering about Andy choosing that wild card. I think it is a bit crazy this week. But when you look at his team, you're like, okay, he is in a position where he's got like 9 players, and I think 2 players not likely for minutes. Now I've got a similar situation. I've got potentially I think 6 players blanking. And one of the players that is starting for me is Dango, who's obviously a big minutes doubt now. But I still think, if he can, saving the wild card is just much more sensible. Like he's joked about Andy, taking out Salah on that wild card, and I think that's ludicrous. But
yeah, I mean,
I think
particularly he's had him a long time, hasn't he? I don't see why. I mean, I had him 0.6, I think, and I'd got him in fairly late.
To be honest, I think Salah could blank in 2 of the remaining 10 game weeks, and I'd still keep him because, he's just not going anywhere for me. The thing about wildcarding this week is, it's just too hard. You're kind of like doing it in the dark because you don't know enough info. So waiting at least until 30. Now 30, I still think isn't ideal because there is a chance we get information about, because obviously by then the FA Cup quarterfinals will have happened, so we'll know sort of who's through. The problem being, though, is we won't necessarily get guaranteed information about when those doubles and blanks will slot in. So basically, we'll know which teams are doubling in 33 and blanking in 34, but we won't know the specific weeks that they do it. And so the combination of who's playing who. And that information is obviously huge for a wild card because you set up, if you're wanting to bench boost in 33, you need to know that info ahead of 31, right? And if you don't know that by 30, before game week 30, then it could leave you as sort of guessing which teams will double when and which teams will blank. So by 31, you will have all the info we need. There's, I think Oscar on Focal's channel said there's about 90% chance we'll get everything we need about info for 33 and 34 by 31, so prior to game week 31.
Looking at this, the only sort of, according to Ben Crellin's table, the only one that's a likely double game week is Man City and Aston Villa. All those other ones in sort of dark blue are possible, unknown, very much unknowns, aren't they?
Yeah, because that's basically the reason for that is City play Villa in what was supposed to be the game week 34 fixture, but then that's very likely to move forward into 33 because of the fact that you've got City in the FA Cup, Villa in the FA Cup, and then also Villa have got obviously Champions League as well. So because of that, the chances of that not moving forward to 33 are very, very slim. With the other fixtures, it's just too hard to call of which fixtures will be a double in 33 because of those FA Cup matches. They're just so hard to call. Like the only game you could probably bank on is the Villa game against Preston. But other than that, there's so many 50-50s in there.
They're all very, very, very tight, aren't they? Like was it Fulham, Crystal Palace, games like that?
Yeah, like Bournemouth, Man City, that could go either way. Like for instance, the game between Forest and Brighton could go either way. So I just think waiting to 31 is the play for wildcard. But yeah, I have got a draft if you had to play it, if your team was decimated.
Yeah, I'd just say the other point there as well is we, after this week, are going into a 2.5 week, basically. I mean, it's Saturday. Yeah. Tuesday, it's 18 days.
Exactly.
The amount that could change in the FPL landscape between game week 29 and 30 is just huge, isn't it?
Exactly. There's so much that could change. And obviously, we've got the international break after game week 29, and then that's followed by the FA Cup quarterfinals, right? So those happen before the midweek.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So there's internationals and FA Cup as well, which is obviously going to involve a lot of the teams we're going to be very interested in.
Exactly. So injuries potential there, over the international break, injuries. And that's also the thing we have to factor into our transfers in 29.
Yeah.
Where we might be, for instance, if we do want a wild card in 31, you might want to be bringing in players for 29 and 30, but just be kind of wary that you don't want to bring in players that could potentially get benched in, say, game week 30, because they've got a fixture, that game week 30 fixture will be coming straight after the FA Cup quarterfinal. So potentially you might have players that get rested in 30 because they've just played, say 120 minutes in a quarterfinal. So
I'm just seeing Colmere has said, just remember it could well be a Friday, could be on a Friday before game week 31. With that in mind, well, we're going to look at a wildcard draft in a minute. If you are planning on wildcarding in 30, do you think it's worth maybe, I'm going to do this, building a wildcard draft in 30 and then maybe waiting to the Friday to see? Do you get what I mean? Because if it's very, very stressful to try and wildcard just on a Friday night.
This is the thing. So the FA Cup fixtures, I think the last game of the FA Cup quarterfinals on the Sunday night, I think it's Villa. So we'll have the deadline for 30 on a Tuesday. So literally we'll probably get the draw around sort of the Sunday night around that time, or maybe the Monday. Okay. We'll get the kind of semi-final draw. So you've literally got about 48 hours to get a wildcard team ready after that info. And that might not be enough info to go off. So
of course, because game week 30 is so it's going to be that really, really long. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So it literally, it's like midweek deadline. You're probably going to be stressed enough about a midweek deadline, let alone activating a wild card at the start of that midweek just to kind of get the info from that weekend. So I just think doing it in 31. And as Cole rightly points out, there's been a lot of double game week announcements recently on Fridays. Now, of course, that's
why do they do that? It's just bloody annoying, isn't it?
It is. It's last minute, but I can understand it a little bit because they have to kind of wait for a lot of the European games, and usually they're on the Wednesdays and Thursdays. But yeah, it's frustrating. So it could well be that we don't get. Obviously, we'll have the draw by sort of Monday, Tuesday, but we might not get the confirmed sort of fixtures moving into place until sort of Friday because of like TV and stuff. So if we get that news on Friday, then that's perfect to then activate it then ahead of the Saturday on the 31 deadline.
I can see why BBC have you on as well. I don't have to do any work. I can just leave all the expert knowledge to you, Roberto. It's brilliant. Okay, so I asked Roberto to put although I think we're both in agreement, it's not something we're going to do this week. Perhaps if you really are, struggling with injuries and stuff.
Yeah.
So this, correct me if I'm wrong, is the wildcard draft you put together. This is annoying. So
that's correct.
Can I move that? Oh, you can see that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to read through it, Roberto, and then we'll get into it? I have a few issues with this one, but can you read it out for anyone who's listening, and then we'll go over it, and maybe you could tell me why these particular players.
Yeah, sure. So the reason I've gone with the team I have before I get into the specific players is you've got to obviously attack this game week 29 because playing a wild card in a blank is not usually a great thing. So you've got to try and kind of combat the free hitters, but also set yourself up because kind of like wild carding in 28, if you did it in 28 or doing it this week, is kind of like walking into 33 and 34 without a sword sort of thing. That's the way I would describe it. You're pretty sort of without your ammunition.
It's a balance. It's sort of like a balancing act, isn't it, between what might happen, which is why I don't.
Yeah, so you want to sort of target the fixtures this week, but equally set yourself up for long term if you're wildcarding now. So the reason for that, so the players I've got, so I've gone one United.
Sorry, Roberto. I'm just going to say we've got Steve-O with us as well.
Oh, great to see you.
Hello, Steve. I hope you enjoy your walk, mate. We're just going through Roberto's draft wildcard.
Just to reiterate, because Steve-O's just joined, this is not my wildcard, Steve-O. I don't advise it. But if anyone had to wildcard this week, this is the team I put together. Basically, the reason I've gone Mazraoui, I'll get that one out of the way first, is because you'll have players like Munoz and Isak obviously doubling, so you can just bench Mazraoui after this week. But the point being is, it's just a sort of this fixture, and then there's a good chance that United could double in 33. So you could have Leicester this week, then just bench him the next couple of weeks, and then have the double in 33 potentially. And then the Forest players, I think you've got to go triple up this week with Ipswich. I think I've seen a lot of teams with double Forest defence and then Wood, but I also think going double attack and Sells is a good play because basically I put Sells a lot higher up on my sort of list of priorities for other goalkeepers.
So how many potential doubles would Forest? I mean, we can go and have a look at the.
Yeah. So in terms of like the projected doubles, I mean, this is all sort of guesswork, obviously, but certainly great trusted sources like James Planet FPL. He's got on his FPL.team site, obviously, Peter from FPL.team really does a great job with that website. And on their sort of, so I'll just get that up now, their sort of projected doubles. But basically, the long and short of it is there's a very good chance, obviously, that as we were saying earlier, City will double in 33. Yeah. Hence why I've gone for triple City. There could be, obviously, because of that, a double for Villa. But right now, we can't say that we know which Villa players will be the options because they blank in 29. It's not worth going for them now, and we could just get to them sort of closer to 33. And then Arsenal, for instance, their team, I've gone for Gabriel just because they're obviously the best defence in the league still. But they're a team that don't have, any scheduled doubles, but they could potentially get one in 33.
Because we've got this likely one here.
Yeah.
So according to this, the players we should definitely be targeting would be Crystal Palace, Newcastle, potentially City and Villa.
Yeah. So the plan with having that on the bench, Isak and Munoz, is you've got the two best from Newcastle and Palace.
Read us through the team for Steve-O who's listening while he's on the walk.
Yeah. I'll read it through for you, Steve. No problem. So Sells in goal, a back four, because I think I've looked at a lot of back threes and I don't love them, to be honest, just because of attacking this week. So Kirkes against Brentford, Gabriel, so you've got some Arsenal defensive cover. Gvardiol, just because of City's potential double going forward. You've got to think long-term if you're on a wild card. And then Mazraoui, just because it's Leicester this week and that they're so poor in attack, especially at games at the King Power. Then I've gone for a differential pick, which I quite like, of Savinho.
This is the one that's the one I don't like. That's the one.
But I know there is a lot of.
Read them out, and then we can go into debate.
Yeah. Semenyo as well. He's frustrating, but he's got a potential double coming up and great fixtures. Clivert, Elanga as well. Chris Wood, and then Haaland. And the bench would be Areola at the moment. It's Bender, but it would be Areola because he's got a potential double in 33.
So, I might have missed the other one you said.
That's all right. And then Isak, Salah, and Munoz making up the bench in 29.
So we've got 1, 2, 3 City. We have got 3 Bournemouth. So what are Bournemouth predicted?
So Bournemouth obviously would need to beat Man City to double in 33.
But it's possible. I mean, I guess it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, it's hard to call that Man City game, isn't it?
Yeah.
So but the thing is, City can lose the FA Cup game against Bournemouth and still double because of what I said about the Villa game. City are playing Villa, so only one of City or Villa need to win for that to be a double in 33. So it's fine. You can just triple up on City without any worries. And yeah, that's what I'm going for. The obviously the main sort of thing of they probably won't double is Forest, because there's a problem with them having a double in 33 because of the fact that they're the Monday night game against Spurs. Right. So the chances are if Forest then beat Brighton in the FA Cup, their double won't be until sort of later, sort of potentially 35, 36. Okay. So, but the point being with Forest, they're so good that it doesn't really matter they don't double. You could just get them anyway.
Yeah, they're doing so good. In the Mark Southerns interview, which I'll plug here, is coming out on Tuesday. He's told me that what did he say? His dad said to him when he got into Forest, and they were winning the European Cup, "You'll never see it this good again." And I mean, obviously they're not winning the European Cup, but they are. I think it's as close to that as they've ever been, and possibly will get again. But yeah, they've been brilliant, haven't they? And Chris Wood obviously has been the what shall I say? The second love of a certain person in the chat, if she's still watching.
Yelena's the leader of the fan club, which I'm a big member of. So yeah.
Okay, so 3 Man City. Only 1 Crystal Palace.
Yeah, so this is the thing. If you go all in on Palace, obviously it ruins your team for this week, doesn't it? So I think
it's the issue, isn't it? It's the issue with Wildcard.
So I think of players that are obviously in an ideal world, this is why I think wildcarding this week is a problem. In an ideal world, you'd want 6 of Newcastle and Palace for the double in 32. And that's why doubling wildcarding in 31 is so good, because you can set up. So my plan will be to wildcard 31, have 6 Palace and Newcastle, and then 3 hit in 33, because the chances are if Newcastle and Palace have a double, and potentially Palace could have another double, that would be obviously an issue, because then they blank. But if Palace lose against Fulham, then they'll have a fixture in 34. So what that means is you'll have a double in 32 for Palace, and then a confirmed game against Arsenal in 34. So that makes free hitting in 33 quite nice if Palace lose. But equally, you can go for the free hit in 34 if Palace win.
Yeah, and only 1 Newcastle as well. Same reason, I guess.
Exactly.
Let's just commented. Sorry to correct you, Gary, but Chris Wood is the first love at this point. That is obviously upset her. Well, I guess he's probably upset her by bringing Chris Wood in and ruining him as an FPL asset. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Only 1 Newcastle. I mean, I guess one thing is, if you've got 5 transfers, I mean, it's kind of a contradictory point. If you had 5 transfers, it would be a lot easier to reshape your team with those Newcastle and get those Newcastle and Crystal Palace players in for 32. But then if you have 5 transfers, why are you wildcarding? You wouldn't be doing
exactly.
That,
I mean, but the thing, like, I can see why people, because of the 5 rolled free transfers we have this season, it makes wildcards a lot more easily fixable, if that makes sense, because you could bank up 5 wildcard, it goes wrong, and then you fix those issues. But in this case, where not everyone will have that luxury going into 29, that's why wildcarding now just leaves you at a disadvantage, because if it goes wrong and you haven't got those banked up transfers, you can't really fix it unless you take hits.
Yeah. Okay, let's go and have a look at our teams. Let's see. So this is you, isn't it, Roberto?
That is correct. Yeah.
For this game week. So how many free transfers do you have in the back saved up, and what are you thinking about doing? So you've got 10. Well, no, you've got 9 players. You're in a worse position than me.
Yeah.
I mean, I have 11 players, but a lot of them are shite.
Yeah.
So do you want to read it out again, just for anyone listening?
Yeah, sure thing. So at the moment, in goal is Henderson without a fixture, Trent without a fixture, Gabriel home to Chelsea, which I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea didn't score in the way the Palmer's playing. Timber at home to Chelsea, Castagna at home to Tottenham, then Palmer, just leave him in there away to Arsenal. We've got a fixture. Dango at home to Brentford. He's the biggest issue, obviously, but a fixture's a fixture. He might still get minutes off the bench. Clive at home to Brentford, Everton away for Bowen, and then Wood on the captaincy at the moment, away to Ipswich, and then Gakpo without a fixture. And then the bench is a non-playing keeper, Salah, Isak, and Hall with all no fixtures. So obviously with 6 blankers, you know, a lot of people might look at this and think, oh, that's got to be a free hit. No, for me, as discussed earlier, I think leaving it for 33 or 34 is better. So my plan is I rolled a transfer last week so that I'd be in a better position for this week.
So how many transfers you got, mate?
So I rolled last week, so I got 2 free for this week. So the plan is with those 2 is to get to 10 players. And goalkeepers are not worth taking hits for. So Henderson's going to stay, and I'm just going to make changes to Trent and Gakpo so that I've got 10 for 29.
So any idea who you're going to change it for? Yeah, I mean, we'll look at my team in a minute. I'm very confused as to what I'm going to do.
There's a few options I'm looking at. So on the pod, actually, I did this week with Tom from Who Got the Assist.
Do you want to plug the pod? We're going to actually plug it, but we're going to talk about it at the end. But I usually have, when I do these streams, once we've got through all the normal FPL stuff, I usually have a little bit of a chat about what the guests been up to since they were last on the channel. But
so on that episode, I was kind of quite convinced that at that point I was going to do Aina for Trent and also Gakpo in out for João Pedro, because I thought a lot of people are doubting Brighton in that City game. I think Pedro could be great. He's got 3 goals in a row.
Oh, and you've got Wood already. I was thinking one at Chris Wood, but you've already got him, haven't you?
Exactly. And I can't get to Haaland basically without taking Palmer out, which I don't want to do this week, because I know that Haaland could be a good captaincy, but equally, if Palmer got something against Arsenal, I wouldn't be surprised. And I'll be annoyed if I took out a player with a fixture. So I think the priority is you got to just focus on the players without fixtures. And so, yeah, I'm looking at replacing Trent and Gakpo. What I've now considered, I had that sort of thought about Gvardiol, but I don't think he's worth the money now. So I'm going to go Trent to a Forest defender, definitely. It's just who I get as a Forest defender, whether it's Milenkovic, who is kind of a good set-piece threat, or I go a bit more pricey and go for Aina, or potentially Nico Williams. But the problem with Nico Williams is there's always a chance that for the odd game that Moreno could start over him, especially because, and I was listening to this on, I think it was the Fantasy Football Scout with Sam and Az. They were talking about it because basically for the game against Villa in 32, I believe, or 31, Forest are playing them. And so that means that Moreno won't be able to play that game because he's on loan from Villa. So Williams will definitely start that game. So potentially you could see Williams get a rest the game before that against Man United. So that might mean he doesn't play in 30, Williams. So that could be a bit of a pain because I need this defender to play both weeks for me. So I'm thinking...
So when are you planning to wildcard? Sorry, I should have asked you that before.
Wildcard is 31 for me.
Definitely?
Yeah, 100%.
Even if we get the information early?
Oh, yeah, if we get the information... But that's the thing, we just won't, because like even if we did, it would still be too much of a rush. Like it's like we get the information, say Sunday night, and then we have to get a team ready in 2 days' time. It's just it's too stressful for me. I can't do that. I need a week to think about a wild card and really kind of fine tune my decisions. So and like I just think it's unlikely we'll get that. I'm not even just saying I wouldn't do it for the sake of time constraints. I genuinely think it's just not going to happen because TV deals and fixtures kind of are getting arranged. But yeah, so the idea is I need a defender for 29 and 30. And if I'm thinking about who gets 2 clean sheets in both weeks, I don't think City get that in 29. They could against Leicester, but I think there could be a chance of Forest getting clean sheets against Ipswich and Man United.
Leicester have
So
got an
that's
annoying.
why I'm thinking
They've got an annoying habit of scoring against the big teams. When I remember early in the season when I had a double Arsenal defence and they scored 2. Was it Justin?
James Justin. Yeah. So I think it's not impossible that City concede against Leicester, but I think the way Ipswich have struggled this season and Forest have been such an elite defence. I've not actually owned a Forest defender since I think game week 5. So I started the season actually with Ole Einar, and he was really good for me the first few weeks, and then obviously I didn't know what was going to happen with Forest, so I wildcarded out Einar in game week 6. So I think it's about time I had some Forest defensive coverage. So I think I'll probably get Milenkovic most likely, because it's just I know he's going to play and he's a bit cheaper than Einar. The kind of more bit of a dilemma for me though is the striker for Gakpo, because I've tossed and turned thinking. So my plan is that I'm going to own all of Salah, Isak, and Haaland for 30, but I can't get to Haaland this week. So what that means is the striker that comes in for Gakpo will then be sold in 30 for Haaland. So I'm basically getting a striker for a 1 week punt in game week 29. And so I've kind of been considering options that not many people are looking at. So João Pedro being one of them. Potentially Jimenez, because they're playing home to Spurs, which is a good fixture on paper. And also I've looked at Evan Nilsson. The problem with Evan Nilsson, though, is I'll have to sell him in 30, and that's a game against Ipswich, which I could get a lot of regret of selling him then. So my plan is...
Why would you have to sell him in 30?
Because I'm getting Haaland that week.
Okay.
So I'm going to getting Haaland for Leicester, because I think that's a fixture I'm going to want him for.
I don't see why, if you're going to get him, I don't see why you don't get him in now.
Because the difference is that I don't want to take a -4 for Haaland in this week, because it would involve selling Palmer when he's got a game. Whereas next week, I think the home to Leicester is much better for Haaland.
I think I would, if you're going to do that anyway, if you're sure you're going to do that, I would take the hit.
But this is the thing. I've looked at this and I've planned it out, Gary. Basically, there could be a scenario where if we get injuries over the FA Cup and the international break, I'd be taking back-to-back hits. So, for instance, if I did Haaland in for a hit this week, taking out a playing Palmer, and then let's say that there was an injury next week to Isak, and then Isak doesn't start for the Brentford game, that could potentially be a back-to-back hit in 29 and 30. Whereas if I do it this way, roll with 2 free transfers, no hits in 29, which is what I'm planning on doing, and then get Haaland in 30, I'll only have to take a -4 to get him in, if that makes sense.
I would still do
That's
that.
what I'm...
Personally,
I'm because I think ultimately it comes down to, do you think Haaland is essential this week? And I don't think he is. Because I think
let's go on to my team, and then because I am facing this exact same dilemma. So, and I may not do it, but that's because I'm not 100% sure I'm going to get Haaland in for 31 either. So
for 30. You're not going to get him for Leicester?
I'm not desperate to do that. Oh God, I've just seen Cunha on my bench and it's made me feel physically ill. Still there. So my team is Pickford at home to West Ham. So I actually have 11 players, if you can call some of them players. Gabriel...
double Ipswich defence, might argue.
Double Ipswich defence, yeah. Gabriel at home to Chelsea. Anderson at home to Tottenham. Davis and Greaves at home to... This is obviously before I've made any transfers. At home to Nottingham Forest. And Buemo away to Bournemouth. Trossard, who's got my captaincy at the minute, at home to Chelsea. Palmer away to Arsenal. Odegaard. And then Jimenez and Visser up front. So, I mean, whatever I do, I'm going to end up with not an ideal looking team, Roberto, let's be honest. But
yeah,
I'm not free hitting, so...
No, yeah. I think the biggest priority for you, Gary, if I'm honest, with this team is to find a captaincy pick. Because at the moment, I think the players you've got, none of them are captaincy options.
Okay, well, let me talk you through my 2 potential moves. So,
okay,
Cunha's going to go, and Trent's going to go one way or the other. Because one, I don't want Trent long term, and Cunha's obviously going to go. So it was so annoying about him getting that suspension, wasn't it? It was like everyone was like, "Oh, Cunha, so brilliant."
Well, as someone who kept Gakpo, I was pretty happy when Cunha got sent off.
Fair play. So one would be just bring in 2 Forest players. So Cunha out to Wood and
Captain Wood.
Yeah, if I did this and Trent out to Anya, I just have a feeling for that player. I've not owned him all season. I mean, literally the only time I had Wood for most of my teenage years, but then also more recently, I was trying to fit a joke in there, Roberto. But this season, I had him for a couple of game weeks. And he did well for me, and then I got rid of him, and he's just keep going, hasn't he? So either that, but the content creator Haaland thing would have me doing something like, I haven't planned it exactly through yet. Haaland in, and then basically the rest of it would have to be. So it would have to be Salah or Palmer to go. I'm not going to lose the 0.5 that I would lose if I get rid of Salah. So it would have to be Palmer out. Let's get rid of Trent and bring. Do you reckon Aina's probably the best punt?
My argument for, if you're going to buy a Forest defender, I think Milenkovic is by far the best. Just because the extra you save through Milenkovic, when I know Aina's the top scoring one, but I do think that's been a bit skewed.
Does money really matter when I'm going to be free hit wildcard in a week or two?
Well, you say that, but if you want to make a move in 30 for you haven't got any Palace players, you might want to get in someone that gets cost a little bit more.
Yelena is a big fan. Yes, I did that specifically.
As Yelena would say, always trust the Serb.
Have you seen? She just said I knew there'd be a Wood joke in there somewhere. Yeah, I got that in there especially for you, Yelena. Have you seen the video I made, Roberto, called 5 Things That Annoy Me About Fantasy Football?
Yes, I have.
I'm thinking of making at some point. I mean, I haven't made an individual video for a couple of months now. I'm thinking about making one over the weekend, actually. But one of the things that was suggested to me, I can't remember if it was Yelena. It might have been, I think it was Yelena, would be the Wood jokes. But to be honest with you, they are worse on Black Box with the Wood jokes than anywhere else. It's like the two of them will have like really good conversations, and then as soon as they start talking about Wood, they turn into a pair of juvenile schoolboys.
We're here for it. It's all good.
It's always trust the Serbs because I couldn't afford Aina. Okay, all right, we'll get Milenkovic in then. And then, okay, so how much would I have then? 8.4. Oh, no, that's because I sold Salah. That's not what I want to do. Palmer. 6.2. I guess I could get in Kluivert.
Yeah, Kluivert's a must, I think.
So, I mean, that is then looking a lot stronger. So then I've got Milenkovic, Anderson, Gabriel, Odegaard, Trossard, and Buemo, Kluivert. I mean, I like the looks of that a lot more, but that's going to cost me.
Yeah.
That's going to cost me a -4.
Who is Haaland coming in for?
Cunha.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, that does look better than it was.
It was, and that's the -4. I mean, compare that to. I mean, I'm going to have Milenkovic anyway if I bring in a Forest defender, and I would have Wood here. And whoever I got rid of, Palmer. Do you think it's worth a -4 to? I mean, I definitely wouldn't if it was a -8 or like. Let's look FPL Andy. I would not be taking that. But for
this is the thing it's about Palmer, isn't it? This transfer dilemma. It's about Palmer. Do you think there's a chance Palmer against the way Arsenal defensively have conceded a few recently? You think there's no chance he gets returned? Because I think there is a good chance.
Let's look at what he's done recently, Roberto.
It's been a while. 0 attempts.
Yeah, 0 attempts.
Yeah, we know.
1 assist.
But you know what I'll point to, Gary? I'll point to this. What's the name of our podcast?
The form is temporary. 7
Class
weeks.
is permanent.
7 weeks and one.
Class is permanent.
I didn't know it was that bad. Bloody hell, that is really
It's
bad.
been something about like 53 days that he's not scored a Premier League goal. But as with Cole Palmer,
incredible.
Form is temporary, class is permanent. So I think if this is the week that Palmer just decides to do Palmer things and turn up, how annoyed will you be? That's what I'm.
But he's
say.
playing against Arsenal as well. It's not like he's. I mean, he blanked against. I mean, he's got an amazing XG in both those games, admittedly, but Leicester had a penalty.
Obviously, he's not someone. If you were wildcarding, for instance, you wouldn't include him on a wildcard. But
No.
in a sort of normal game week when it's, well, for instance, in a blank game week when all we need is players that play, and he's got a fixture, and obviously, yeah, sure, Haaland could do well this week, but so could Chris Wood, right? And you've already got, potential move to Chris Wood if you prefer him. So, point being is you could potentially get to Wood and keep Palmer, and then basically not take a hit.
So Milenkovic is going to be in either way. So I'm basically talking about Kluivert and Haaland.
Haaland and a -4.
Or Palmer
versus
and Wood.
Palmer and Wood with no -4.
Mm.
That's the thing you got to factor in the hit.
Yeah, when you look at it like that. I don't know, Roberto. This one is probably going to go. I usually make my transfers on a Monday night because I like to have Friday night because I like to have a lie-in on a Saturday. But the deadline's not till 1:30 this week, is it? So
Correct.
I'm probably going to watch Andy's deadline stream, which should be hilarious, particularly if he's on a wild card. And
I suspect he'll bottle
right
it. I suspect he'll bottle it, to be honest. Yeah. He's saying I get why he's trying to consider it, right? Because his team's in a mess, but I think he knows because he's one of the FPL gurus, right? He knows long term it won't help him for 33, 34. So I think if he could take a -8 and just get through this week, he probably will.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, he's been unlucky, hasn't he? I'm been a bit unlucky with. I mean, to be honest, I'll be selling them anyway. But yeah, I mean, even if I did have a messed up team this week, as in like 7 players, I think I'd free hit rather than wildcard.
Yeah, no, I think free hit is much better use this week than a wild card. But I also think if you're picking which week to free hit, I'd prefer not use it this week, if possible. It's all team dependent, isn't it? If you've got 3 Villa, 3 Liverpool, 2 Palace, then of course free hitting this week makes sense. But I think most teams have already been planning for this week, so they're not necessarily needing to do that.
Okay, let me have a look at my script. Have we got any questions in the chat? If you have any questions in the chat, I know we've got some FPL novices in here, like Yelena and Stevo. Please stick them in. Me and Roberto would be happy to answer them. So I just wanted to finish, Roberto.
So going back to what you were saying, Gary, we was talking about, because I still haven't decided, to be honest. I think I'm pretty set on Milenkovic, as Yelena says, always trust the Serbs. But I'm not 100% sure on my Jimenez Pedro dilemma. Who would you prefer out of those two?
Okay, let me go Pedro or Jimenez. So who have they got?
Yeah,
this week?
remember as well, this is obviously, it's a specific thing for me because I'm going to get rid of them in 30. This is just this week. So home to Tottenham for Jimenez versus Pedro away to City.
I'd definitely go Jimenez.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But it also crosses my mind that, because I see a lot of people think about Evan Ilson this week. I think Jimenez gets the same sort of minutes as Evan Ilson, sort of like 70, 75.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's necessarily an issue. I think it's unlikely that Jimenez won't start. I don't think Muniz will play this game.
Yeah, no, I'd definitely go Jimenez. So I wanted to bring this up, Roberto, this wonderful tool that you...
Yeah, do you know what I call it? I've given it a name, Gary.
Go on.
It's not very imaginative, but I've called it the Asmanometer.
Okay. Go on. We're saying that Wood is immature, but then we're going along with the Yes Man thing. So
Asmanometer.
The reason I wanted, so I talked about this, as you know, Roberto, in my interview with Adam from Above Average FPL. The variance in this chip. So when we're talking about actual assistant manager employed strategies that people went with, I mean, where do you think that cutoff point is? Maybe Silver?
So I think, to be honest, I saw a lot of people go Moyes, Emery, Glasner was quite popular.
That was, yeah. Silver, Glasner, these do not appear very popular to me.
No.
I'm going to say the variance in that clip was pretty small.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think people look at it too sort of narrow-mindedly, this chip, and they say, oh, across those 3 weeks, you've scored 50 points. That's a huge swing. Actually, when you compare one combination to the next, so like right at the bottom of the list is Ange. Now, as Adam rightly pointed out, right, no one's picking that. But
if you did that, you deserve to get 29 points.
Exactly, you deserve what's coming to you. You deserve what's coming to you. But it is a good point that, yeah, if you'd have gone with that, it's only about a 30-point gap to probably about the fourth best option you could have picked. So it's not a massive swing. Like, obviously, it's a bit of a swing, but it's not massive. It's interesting actually looking at this now. I'm thinking about it because obviously the best play would have been to triple captain Salah in 24, and then play it on in 25 and 26, 27 to basically go Glasner in the 26 and 27, and have in 25 go with Emery. That was the best. Silver actually.
I'm a bit disappointed, Roberto, that you haven't kept on updating it between now and the end of the season, because there'd only be like 2 billion potential.
Yeah, no. To be honest, it was just a thing because obviously it was a new chip to the game, right? And I was so intrigued to see where people ranked on the sort of points of combinations, and because I knew that 24 to 26 was obviously the first possible weeks you could use it for that 3-week spell. I was intrigued to see, especially when it's talking about how to do well up against the triple captain. It was quite interesting to see because if you triple captain Salah, obviously in 24, you smashed it with 87, right?
Yeah.
If you triple captain Salah in 25, you smashed it with 60.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see, like, obviously the money pick really was to go for Moyes, Herzl, Glasner. I don't think anyone did that. And even if you'd have gone for, say, Glasner, Herzl, Glasner in the last 25 to 27, that would have scored you only 61. So actually, whilst you would have had the triple captain Salah alongside that in 24, there's still only the best 3 combination of 3-week spell. It still stands with Moyes, Herzl, Glasner with 63. So it's interesting that, I was never considering the double, kind of the single game weekers, because I went Moyes, Emery, Arteta, just trying to attack the double game weeks table bonus every time and then go for what I thought was the most likely result. And just shows sometimes that this season, especially, has shown the players like the managers like Silva, like Herzl, like Glasner, when they've had single game weeks, have actually done really well.
So I'll say this to you. Do you think we should keep it next season? I mean, obviously the variance is very small this season, but if it was introduced, I mean, I've heard people say it would have to be game week 10 onwards because, the table point bonus wouldn't work otherwise, would it? There's got to be some sort of structure in the league. There could be a lot more variance in it then, couldn't there?
No, it wouldn't work at the start of the season, certainly until around. So I think the table has to sort of even out a little bit, even if it's a few weeks in. It be impossible to kind of get the
The point I was trying to make is I think everyone did it this season because it became available basically when there were 2 double game weeks in a row I think there could be more variance in it next season if they keep it. So I'll ask you 2 things about it. 1, do you think they should keep it? And 2, at what point do you think they should make it available if you do think they should keep it?
Right. So my first point is I don't think they should keep it just because I think it is not FPL as we know and love it, because it's obviously not players. That's the first thing. Secondly, it's going more on a team outcome basis than players getting returns. So when previously you've said, oh, let's pick this player because you think they are going to do well. You're not then saying, I think Liverpool will win. You're just saying, I think Salah will score goals. So I think it goes way too much towards clubs than players, and we're not playing fantasy, football for the teams. We're playing it for the players. So
Yeah, I agree.
And then the next thing is the fact it blocks off your other chips. That I think that's a bad move, because we're looking at it now, right? So if Palace get a double in 32 and 33, which is very likely, then that's going to block people from playing free hit, because they'll probably think, oh, I have to ask man now in 31 to 33, right? And pick Glasner. So it blocks you off from popular chips like free hit and triple captain and bench boost. And the other thing I have a problem with it is more the fact that it takes up a slot in your 3 players from that team, because it actually, rather than it being a good sort of chip for the engaged managers, it actually punishes the engaged managers, especially with the way that it happened this season with the late sort of double game week 24 and 25 announcements. Is managers planned well to make sure they had the best 3 Liverpool ahead of 24, and then this chip gets thrown in and means people have to start questioning, do they take out their Gakpos and their Trents to get slot in? And I just think that is a problem in itself, because it's kind of punishing good planning, I think. So yeah, I think definitely I would not want it to stay, but I also see the argument that people are saying where we don't really have a choice. It's probably going to stay because they've done all the coding now. So to remove that might be quite difficult. But to answer your second question about, do I think how should it be done if it stays next season? I think it should be definitely only 1 week. I think 3 weeks just complicates it too much. Like, being able to transfer out the manager just gives too much to think about. When you got player transfers that already takes up too much of people's time, to then add managers into that is too crazy. And yeah, they just overcomplicated the chip for the sort of casual managers. So I think, yeah, it needs to kind of be massively oversimplified now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess could they program it so it would be what am I thinking? That you could play a second chip, like not in the first week you activate it, but in the second week? Or do you think that would be an unfair advantage?
Yeah, but I think it would be a bit sort of not as good as we think it might be, because then you could have sort of, it's just you'd never dream of playing the other chips all at the same time together. So why should this chip be different, sort of thing? Like, I just think it's going to leave people kind of scratching their heads, getting a bit even more confused about how the chips work as a general sort of chips in general. So yeah, I just think simplify it down. And if it really is going to stay this complicated, then I think it's got to go.
Cool. So I thought I don't know why I've taken off the share screen, and for some reason we haven't become bigger, but I thought we'd finish by talking a little bit about your recent endeavours, Roberto. So first of all, I thought we would talk about your recent appearance on 606, which you told me you didn't mention it in the interview. I don't know which I did with Roberto back in, when was it now?
December was it?
Yeah. How did that come out? How have you come to be been on it 3 times?
Yeah, so this week was my 3rd appearance. So I basically got into contact with Ali, what probably would have been maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. So I started listening to Fantasy 606.
Alistair Bruce Spall, yeah?
That's the guy, yeah. Great, lovely guy. Really easy to speak to. And I honestly, so I think it was the end of the 21-22 season. I think that's when I started listening to them, around sort of April time. And as soon as I started, I was like, this needs to be a permanent. Every single week I'm listening to them, and it's been that way since. I don't think I missed an episode. So love them. Honestly, the thing about Fantasy 606 is I love how much, a bit like with Juice, where I talked about this on my interview, how much they involve the community and like it's interactive. And that's what 606 do so well. So they've obviously got listeners that come in, and each week they've got a listeners team where you can make transfers and try and get more points and beat them in the mini
I've
league.
got to be honest, I've never listened to it.
Honestly, I really suggest it.
I heard that the BBC's coverage was crap. Now, or for casuals, quote unquote. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've heard through the grapevine.
Yeah, I would disagree, because for casuals, I think it's the best thing. Because the funny thing about it is you've got the dynamics between the 3 of them. Dave, who's kind of the stat man, so he's kind of all about, you know, XG and looking into data and stuff. Bear with a sec. I'll just make sure I don't run out of charge. We've also got Ali, who is a commentator, really, really amazing BBC commentator. He's like the sort of more template manager. So he's kind of he's the anchor that kind of gets them kind of under control. And then you kind of contrast that with Chris, who he's the Maverick manager. And I
messaged you, didn't I? I love Chris Sutton.
Chris Sutton is brilliant.
He's just like, I've never listened to him on there, but I did used to listen to the BBC a lot. You know, their football coverage, general football coverage, and he's always got like a really good moany take on things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He loves a moan. But it's brilliant because Chris is like, he's almost like a little bit anti-FPL in a way, which makes it so entertaining. So he obviously plays the game. So he's got his son, who he calls his team Clough and Taylor. Right. So his son Taylor, he makes a team and he makes out it's like Brian Clough. And so the plan is it's like they manage the team together, but he takes so many risks, and he's like, for instance, this season he hasn't had Salah in, you know, he's like, oh, we don't want Salah, we don't want everyone else. So it's brilliant, and it's a great sort of dynamic between the three of them. But to go back to your original point, I think certainly managers like Chris, who like to take those maverick picks and take some risks, it suits the casuals, that sort of chat. And then you got Ali, who's a bit more level-headed. Maybe, you know, the template managers, the engaged managers would agree with a lot of what his, you know, potentially boring picks are, but they're effective, and, you know, he ends up doing well. And then you got Ali, you got Dave, who's almost like the analytics manager, where he's looking into, oh, this player in the last 10 game weeks have got 5 XG or whatever, and then that's suiting a different sort of FPL manager. So yeah, they've got a perfect blend, and they've got such fun parts that aren't FPL as well. So like if you're having a sort of tough game week, or you're not that interested in the stats and the heavy stuff, they also have really good, like, one of the things that got me into it was they do a lot of like anecdotal stuff and sort of talking about their experiences and their like life at home and stuff like that. So sometimes there'll be like stories that Ali would talk about where he's gone on a holiday with his family to like a water park, and they've, you know, been talking about the world's largest water slide and how they're so confused that it was reported in the news that it was the largest, and Ali's done the research.
It sounds a bit like the FPL official pod, where like Julian Ron, obviously he's a football expert, but he's not necessarily an FPL expert.
Oh yeah, this is the funny thing. Like Dave on the pod is branded as the expert for the pod because he comes up with all the stats and the differential picks and all this. Yeah. But they are, you know, tongue in cheek sort of in a way. They know they're not FPL experts and they don't have an amazing rank, but they provide more of a sort of entertainment, and it's great to see the kind of dynamic between them. And yeah, they're such funny pods, and they have their famous game of, they have something called Sudden Death, which is basically named after Chris. So it's like sudden death format, and they'll then have that at it sort of with their guest, and they'll kind of ask them football FPL questions. So nice. Yeah, it's just really, really fun to kind of get involved in. And yeah, I've been, because I want to get into football commentary as I kind of talked about in my last interview with you. And Ali's a big inspiration of mine.
You speak so well, mate. I mean, when we did the interview, that must have been before we did the FPL live stream. Because I was so impressed when we the Elite FPL live stream. I was so impressed.
Yeah, I think it was.
I was so impressed with you with that, and speaking today, you speak so well, mate.
Thank you.
Sure, maybe the chat might reflect that if they are so kind. So we've got a question here from Com. Free transfers. I'm looking at bringing in Kirkes for Hall. I've gone off Aiton Nuri. He says he's just done this one just to me, which means I might do Visser to Evan Nielsen. Did I get that right, Roberto?
You got it right.
Come on. What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on that, Roberto?
I think the Kirkes in for Hall is a really good transfer because you're going to want Bournemouth players in general, right? And if you're looking at the thing with Kirkes is I don't think you're getting for clean sheets because Bournemouth the last few weeks have just been sloppily conceding goals thanks to Kepa basically. And so I don't think you're getting him for the clean sheets. A bit like with Vardio, you're getting him for the attacking threat, Kirkes. So I don't mind that at all. I think he's a decent option. And then I would also say that Evan Ilson is, he's one of the forwards I looked at. But the only reason I'm not going there this week is because of the pain it could cause me selling him for Haaland in 30. Like if Haaland blanks and Evan Ilson got a hat-trick against Ipswich, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. So I don't mind Evan Ilson, certainly if you're, not wildcarding anytime soon, because the fixtures for Bournemouth are so nice coming up. The only thing I would say is I don't think he's 100% nailed for minutes. Like he's going to get most starts, but he will come off around 70, 75. So if you're happy with that, then sure, go for Evan Ilson. But, around sort of the FA Cup as well, would I be surprised if, let's say, Ipswich, Dango started and Evan Ilson was rested? Because they've obviously got the FA Cup game just before that Ipswich match.
Do you reckon they'll prioritise that?
I think they probably will, I would imagine. I mean, it's interesting I've seen a lot of people saying we were saying about Moreno earlier with Forest, like, would they start Williams in the game against Brighton in the FA Cup and then but can they afford to sort of rotate in their defence when they're trying to get top four? I don't know. So it's interesting, but I would try and avoid the headache where possible, and hence why I'm thinking, if you're going to have to get a forward for the next 2 weeks, it's got to be Chris Wood because you just know he's going to play.
So we've just got a comment here from Yelena. Yeah, Roberto speaks so well, really engaging. Completely agree.
Oh, thank you, Yelena. Really appreciate that.
Agree. Completely agree. So I thought we would finish by so Roberto has his own podcast. You can see the logo there. You can't read it. Called The Form is Temporary podcast.
Yep.
Which basically is Roberto and Chris. They have some great guests on there. The best one was me, let's be honest, but also some smaller names like Sam from FPL Family. It's basically a who's who of FPL, isn't it?
Yeah,
Focal.
We've had Focal, we've had not no one really that big, but it's no. All jokes aside, it's been a pleasure to get these lovely guys and women on because they've been brilliant. I mean, this is what we love about the pod. It's the guests that come on that make it really. We're just there to sort of pick their brains really, but it's really good fun and we've really enjoyed it. So it's such a nice thing when we're kind of busy in the week with uni to kind of have that sort of day of sort of doing what we love and just kind of chilling out for an hour or two. It's really, really good sort of therapy for us really. So we love it. We really enjoy it.
So another question I have, because so for anyone maybe who's watching this back, who's not watched my channel before, my channel is mainly, or has become mainly an interview channel, and I know how difficult it is to get the big guests on. But you just seem to have them lined up, like clicking the thing. Is that all because like how active you are in the FPL community and like all the connections you've made going to the football events, which you won, didn't you, Juices?
Yeah,
congratulations.
The Juice tournament.
As well as what was the other thing? And the content creator award.
Oh yeah, the content creator fund back in.
It's an award.
January.
It's an award. We're calling it an award.
It's not, but we'll take it. Let's make out it's an award. It's a content creator fund. Yeah, the brilliant sort of scheme put up by Juice. Yeah. I think it's a good question.
And the brilliantest thing, Roberto, is when you then did that video that you put on X, where it's basically like, I've won an Oscar. I want to thank. You almost look like you were crying. I'm going to thank my family, my friends.
I want to thank everyone who's got me up to this point. Like, no, I felt like I needed to do that because it.
No. It
always
was lovely.
appreciated.
It was lovely.
It was always appreciated, the support we get for the pod, always every week. To know that people listen in and that they care about the pod is so rewarding for us doing it. No, it's really good fun. And I think when you said about sort of how you kind of get the people on, genuinely, like the community is a big part of it. Like if the community wasn't as open and welcoming as it is, then it would be nigh on impossible. But I have to give a shout out to Juice because when I started up, they picked me as the Watford. They called it back then the Watford Juicer. So I did sort of some videos on their channel.
That sounds very weird.
Yeah, I know. So they had it was like an acronym for. It was journalistically untrained, independent club expert reporter. So I was doing all the videos for FPL on Watford players in that 21-22 season, and then that kind of the juices kind of didn't last very long. So then after that, but just because of that, and I mean going on the show a few times, sort of in the flesh and going on the show, that obviously helped kind of boost, I suppose, my place in the community, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And so, but also then going to stuff like Fantasy Football Fest, going to FPL sort of juice tournaments, as you rightly said, you kind of meet those people face to face and you form connections, you know, with some really great people, some big people in the community. So
you hold a knife to their chest and say, "Come on, form is temporary," or else.
Of course, yeah. No, we put them in the back of a van and we get them on our pod. No, of course not. Of course, no. It's just really nice to speak to everyone. Just sort of about FPL, about life in general, and you form those connections. But then, yeah, as a result, I guess as the sort of real life offline connections start to strengthen, the online ones stay, you know, strong, and followers start to increase, I guess. So through that, I've sort of gotten to know a lot of people in the community, and it's just kind of that they've said, you know, really positive stuff about the podcast, and then I've said, oh, is it something you'd be interested in? And then the conversation sort of developed that way, I suppose. So yeah, it's really good. But always grateful to the people that kind of spend their evenings with us, and it's always good fun.
No, and I came on and it was a great experience. Just a couple of comments here. Yelena says everyone loves Roberto, and Combs says, what other time would you have supporters from different teams being so supportive of each other?
Yeah, considering Ash is a Luton fan, I think we got a pretty good relationship, I think.
Yeah, and I would reflect. I mean, I only started making content 5 months ago in about a week, and sport's been amazing. Yourself, Roberto, Steve, and Yellow Noritate especially. I didn't tell you I was going to mention this, but I'm going to. I know that we have talked about this. I phoned Roberto up one night when I was a bit drunk and tried to convince him against this, and it's also been a bit of a bone of controversy in our content creator group. You're giving it up at the end of the season, Roberto. Taking a break. Could you explain why? Could you explain why?
Yeah, so, I mean, nothing is confirmed yet. Nothing is locked in, as the FPL phrase goes. But obviously, our life has been pretty hectic, to be honest. Myself and Chris, these last 3 years with uni. The first year, we had no confidence, basically. And that's why the pod didn't start until 2023. And then, I mean, to be fair, I hadn't even sort of... in first year, I lived in halls, as most people do at uni, and I'd made friends with Chris since the first day of first year. But then, you know,
is he doing the same course as you?
Yeah, he's doing sports journalism as well. But then when I actually moved out in first year, out of halls, into a house, so I then moved into a house in second year with Chris. That's only when we started, you know, having those chats. Those deep chats about FPL, because we were both playing FPL, but we weren't like.
Do you actually go to that room where we recorded the interview in? I mean, you're there now. That special recording studio thingy that you use your thing.
Yeah. We go over it.
Nice.
So, funnily enough, right now I'm actually back this week because we got a reading week, so I've got nothing on. So I'm back at home back in good old Hertford.
That's why your background was different today. Which not that everyone else can see it, but.
Yeah. So then the plan is, so basically once we'd moved in a house together, we thought, and we started talking about FPL more, and I suggested, should we do a podcast at I think the end of that first year of uni, at sort of around sort of 2023 summertime. Then we thought at the start of the new season we'd get a podcast going, and we've been doing it in the sort of uni lecture buildings where we have our sort of lectures where we do podcast editing and recording and stuff ever since. And so it's been a sort of like a thing where we've done it because we know we've been busy, but it's like a nice sort of chill off the sort of brain where we're so busy the rest of the week. And we knew that it was something we'd be doing as a hobby. We're not like doing it for we're not content creators in the respect that we're doing it for money or anything like that. It's all just off our own back. Nothing's paid for
the love.
Sort of thing. Yeah, we're doing it for the love of the game. Exactly that. And so we obviously knew that in third year we'd have to do less episodes than second year because we'd have our dissertations to write up and finalize. We'd have exams going on, in the month of 2025 and the year of 2025. So yeah, we knew it would be obviously harder this year, but we've tried to kind of get content out when we can. We've taken weeks off when we've had exams, when we've needed to. But yeah, I think we're going to sort of take off a few weeks around sort of end of April because that's when we'll have the exams. But the plan was, yeah, as far as we know, because when we graduate, so we're going to graduate in September. So we actually graduate in the Lincoln's Cathedral, which is going to be a great day. Really looking forward to that. But yeah, obviously when you graduate, it's sort of an unknown world, isn't it? So we're hoping, all things being well, both me and Chris will, get into good jobs and get off, fall our feet on the ground sort of thing. But we just don't know, ultimately, is the sort of, so in an ideal world, we'd kind of get a job. If it's not sort of a 9 to 5 and we're really busy in midweeks, like we're, obviously we've got a schedule at uni. So we know when our timetables are, and we've got 3 days on a Wednesday where we can do the pod. And if our jobs are both, we have to travel or we don't know where we're going to be living at this point. So yeah, we're going to have to work it out. But if there is a situation where we can work it out, then yeah, we'll try it.
You could do it online.
Potentially, but it's also about sort of timings and when
Literally,
people are available.
I get what you mean. Literally, it took me because I'm trying to arrange to do my regular pod with one person next year. Would have to arrange times and stuff, so not sure if we can do it yet. But what I would say is, it took me an hour to create the thumbnail, and I'm not putting pressure on you. Like I know we've had this. Me and Roberto had this conversation before. It took me an hour to put together the thumbnail and the script for this last night, and it took me half an hour to up. It's maybe 2.5 hours a week in the evening. I know you guys go into more detail, but you know what I mean. I think you'll find you probably are gonna have more time than you expect.
I think I agree with you, to be honest, Gary. I think I do agree with you. It's just we just don't know what we're going to be doing then. Like I might be traveling. Who knows? I might go on a gap year. Who knows? But like
that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see once we graduate. Where we're going to go into. And if I'm working, for instance, with Watford, right? I've done my work experience with Watford. If that's not a thing that you can kind of do half-heartedly and have 2 p.m. sort of pods and just, oh, sorry, Watford, I'm just filming Form is Temporary. Can I just have a little break on my shift? So yeah, no, of course, but
they might love it, mate. They might love it. You could do it, go around and get a bit of the Watford ground in and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We're leaving it open to depending on what happens.
Well, as a big fan, by the way, I should have asked you that beforehand. I don't know if that was public knowledge. Was it?
What's that?
That the Form of Temporary may be taking a break.
No, we've said it on a few pods already this season.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't completely spill on you. But as a big fan of the show, I would obviously love it if you.
No, we appreciate that. We appreciate those kind words.
Please check out the Form is Temporary. Could Yelena maybe coming on at some point? You suggested.
Well, I've tried a few times. To be fair, it's
she's a difficult lady to get on to things.
No, I appreciate it. It's not easy because she's got a lot of stuff going on right now with sort of living arrangements, and that's all fair enough. And it's fine because we've kind of got our pods sort of scheduled for the end of the season because me and Chris knew that sort of around April time when we had essays to hand in. Exams to do. I wanted to, because I'm always the scheduler, right? So I try to kind of get ahead of time.
You're very much the lead of that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like if it wasn't, if I didn't turn up, the pod wouldn't happen, sort of thing. Like I feel like I'm, maybe the creator of it, so it feels like my baby a little bit. Like if Chris couldn't make a week, I'd get someone else in, and I'd always try and be there if possible. So. But yeah, with guests, it's we're trying to get anyone that's happy to come on. We're happy to get anyone, but yeah, obviously with sort of depending on how we do next season. But hopefully, at some point next season, if we do bring it back, then yeah, we'd love to get Yella on for sure.
And a second appearance for Yella has just said, once I have a working laptop, and find a new home, there'll be no stopping me. Excellent.
Oh, appreciate that.
So Yeah, before we finish, Roberto, anything you wanted to say?
I'll just shout out to you, Gary. Honestly,
Thank you,
like
mate.
I love these, pre-deadline chats.
They're good.
Really
I've
interesting.
enjoyed this. Me and you
It's been great.
always find time when I think it's going to be an hour. We always, man, we love it when we get to talk. I mean, even when you got me on to do that little psychology spot for your interview for your
Documentary.
and I still managed. We still talked for about an hour and a half, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. Like once we start talking, we've got the chemistry to keep going for hours.
we do. Thank you so much for watching, especially to Yelena and Combe and Joe and Steve-O who've been watching live. Just trying to make sure I don't forget anyone. Please, these allegations. Combe said Yelena is always in the pub, according to the vlogs. These allegations are hard to deny, Yelena. I mean, I would always be in the pub. I can't bloody afford it, though. What was I going to say? Yeah, so I'm hoping to do a few more live streams between now and the end of the season. I think Steve-O, Yelena, and a couple of other people have said maybe they've joined me. Basically, these are about me getting to hang out with mates and learning to live stream ahead of next season. Thank you, Yelena. She says, great stream, guys. But
thanks, Yelena.
What the channel is generally more well known for is interviewing big content creators. There's interviews out there with Andy of Let's Talk FPL. Mark Summons is coming out next week, as Yelena. Almost anyone you can think of, particularly if they're related to the fantasy football scout community. Please please subscribe. It'd be great to get up to 500 subscribers before the channel turns 5 months old in a couple of weeks. And see you in the next one.